Before we dive deep into this gaming greatness, I want to make it clear that this video is sponsored by MSI. For those that are long-time viewers, you might be surprised to hear that from me. Suffice to say that I wouldn't be taking their money if I didn't think it was the right thing to do, and when MSI asked if they could pay me to use my open source latency testing tool on their monitor, well, that's an offer I can't refuse. So without further ado, let's get into this. The monitor I have to my side here is the MSI MAG 323 UPF, a native 4K 32-inch 160Hz RapidIPS panel with a whole bunch of gaming-focused features. The primary of which all has to do with this little port, the HDMI 2.1 port specifically. That is a bit of a rarity on gaming monitors. Though what's more of a rarity is the full implementation of the HDMI 2.1 spec, specifically ALLM and VRR, that's Auto Low Latency Mode and Variable Refresh Rate. The latter is one you should be familiar with in the form of Adaptive Sync, G-Sync, or FreeSync. Basically, the display only refreshes when the system has a new frame ready, making for a smoother and tear-free experience. ALLM, on the other hand, is pretty new, and in short, allows the display to automatically switch modes to give you the best experience, specifically switching to a low latency game mode when it detects that you're playing a game. It's worth noting here that within the HDMI 2.1 spec, ALLM and VRR aren't required features, which means that MSI has put effort into adding support for these in their monitors. That's great to see and helps make your gaming experience better regardless of what system or console you're playing on. So I think it's time to crack out my open source latency testing tool and see how much of a difference ALLM and the MSI MAG 323 UPF makes. And for this, MSI have kindly provided a PS5 for me to test on. I'll be using Call of Duty Modern Warfare 3, the latest and apparently much improved version of COD. When it comes to how I'm going to test this, I'll be using a actually now released update for the latency tool, which lets me use the microphone to listen out for button presses, jump specifically in this case, and the light sensor to measure a change in light level. I'm using the very first level of the campaign as it happens to be the exact perfect spot for me to test this with. As you get up onto the ramparts of the gulag that you're breaking into, there are a bunch of spotlights out in the distance. If you line your camera up just right, you can have one of the spotlights be blocked by the brick or the rampart in front of you. Jumping then reveals that light, so let's get testing. So what we're doing here is looking for this light, and we're going to use this big brick structure to basically perfectly obscure it so that when you hit jump, it reveals it. So if I put the latency sensor on the screen just below where the light is going to pop up from, tiny bit lower, then we take our microphone, we put it right on the jump button, and then we basically just tap it. Unfortunately, the joys of data collection is that you need to do this a lot of times, so I'll get back to you when I have some results to show. Right, we've got our results. Starting with a non-MSI branded monitor, that averaged 45.7 milliseconds, with the lowest result being 32.7 milliseconds and the highest being 65.2 milliseconds. That isn't all that much use without some context, so let's provide some. Testing the MAG 323 UPF with ALLM off but VRR on, which may or may not be both of them anyway, we get much better results. 36.44 milliseconds on average, or almost 10 milliseconds faster. And in fact, only a couple milliseconds off averaging the same as the minimum from before. The real trick though is when you turn ALLM on, where the average drops again down to 32.4 milliseconds. That is less than the lowest result from the other monitor, and actually the highest result here is a full 3 milliseconds faster than the average from the first result. That's a significant difference. Just to explain why that is so significant, latency is a pretty big deal in gaming. The lower the latency, the more responsive a game is, and in a competitive setting, the quicker you can react. In a true handshot first style situation, if your system runs with less latency, you're gonna win those engagements more often. If you're playing a racing game, the quicker your car responds to your inputs, the easier it will be to control and hit the apex every time, skill level not included. There are a bunch of steps in the latency pipeline though, so let me run you through what those steps are. What we've been measuring here is end-to-end latency, as in from you hitting a button or flicking your joystick to you seeing that change happen on screen. Within that though, there's latency that the input device adds. In this case, that's our controller. The controller takes time to register your input, process it, and then send it wirelessly to the PlayStation. There's then the rendering time. At 4K 120 Hz, that means new frames every 8.3 milliseconds. It's going to take at least 8.3 milliseconds for that input to show up, or often 2 frames, so 16.6 milliseconds instead. Then there's the time that the display takes to draw the frame. That's where MSI comes in here, and as we've seen, they've clearly done a good job of keeping that latency down as much as possible. It's worth talking about the playing experience on the MAG 323 UPF, because I'm genuinely impressed. Playing COD at 4K and 120 Hz, even on my less than preferred input device, aka controller, is a great experience. The 4K resolution brings a sharp clarity to the in-game visuals, making details stand out well. The 120Hz refresh rate contributes to smooth and responsive gameplay, enhancing the overall fluidity of the experience. Colours are well rendered and balanced, adding a level of vibrancy without being oversaturated. The combination of these elements creates an enjoyable gaming session for sure. There's also a handful of extra gaming features built right into the monitor that can help make your gaming experience even better. The biggest of which, especially for those on consoles, is the smart crosshair. This is pretty unique, as while you can find a range of crosshairs on other monitors, this one is quite possibly the best. Not only does it provide an on-monitor crosshair for that competitive advantage in games that don't have one, but it adapts to what's on screen and will change colours so that it's always visible. It's remarkably quick at that too, making it a fantastic addition to your gaming experience. They've also got night vision, a mode that helps boost the brightness in the darkest areas of the game, making those frankly painful blackout skins that the sweatiest of gamers always use a little less effective. The last one that I want to mention is their optics scope function. Basically a picture-in-picture way to add a zoomed scope to any weapon. I'll leave it up to you if that's cheating or just using the best tech you can. Plus, if you want to control all of these settings, everything from brightness to the scope, you can use MSI's Gaming Intelligence app from your desktop or laptop and control everything on the fly. Pretty handy. One of the other great features is actually the ability to update the firmware, something that's pretty rare to find on monitors. That means if MSI has any more features or tweaks that they can add to make your monitor better, it's a pretty easy process to add them in. You just need to plug in the USB cable and you're good to go. Actually, since we're talking about the USB port, let's talk I/O. You've got the USB-B port for the 3-port USB hub, plenty for your mouse, keyboard and audio, plus a USB-C port which acts as both DisplayPort in, USB, and the monitor will provide up to 90 watts of USB PD charging. You've also got two HDMI 2.1 ports, which with a compatible device can do the full 4K 160Hz, alongside DisplayPort 1.4a, which will also do the full 4K 160 as well. One great feature with all this I/O is the KVM. Basically, to switch both the display and peripherals connected to the USB hub between devices all in one go, say between a laptop over USB-C and a desktop with a USB-B port, or even to a console like this PS5. Again, pretty handy. So it seems like MSI really cares about latency, and the fully featured MAG 323 UPF makes for a great pairing with a PS5, or with a gaming PC of course. It's also great to have ALLM support, and it does seem to make a difference even on a gaming monitor like this. If you're interested in finding out more about MSI's monitors, I'll leave a link to them in the description for you to check out. Once again, thank you to MSI for sponsoring this video, and to you guys for watching. If you want to see more videos like this one, check them out on the end cards. There is plenty for you to have a look at. And of course, if you want to stay up to date from videos from me, you can hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell notification icon. If you got any questions, please do leave them in the comments down below. But otherwise, thanks for watching, hope you enjoyed it. I'll see you all in the next video.